Have you ever wondered if the greatest advantage in life isn't finding the right person, but becoming someone who no longer needs anyone to complete them? Most people spend years chasing love, believing it will finally make them feel worthy. Yet the people who seem the strongest, the calmest, and the most impossible to manipulate often share one surprising trait. They learned how to be alone without feeling lonely. By the end of this video, you'll understand why some of history's greatest minds considered solitude a hidden superpower, and why staying single for a season may be the smartest investment you'll ever make. There was once a man who spent nearly every waking hour trying to keep someone else happy. He answered every text within seconds. He cancelled plans with friends whenever she called. He worked harder, earned more money, bought better gifts, and convinced himself that if he sacrificed enough, he would finally be loved the way he deserved. At first, everything seemed perfect. She praised him for always being available. She admired his kindness. She told him she had never met someone so devoted. But slowly, something changed. The more he gave, the less she valued what he offered. His attention became expected instead of appreciated. His kindness became ordinary. His sacrifices became invisible. Then, one ordinary afternoon, she looked at him with complete indifference and quietly said, "I just need some space." Those words shattered him, not because the relationship ended, but because he realized something terrifying. He had spent years building someone else's life while forgetting to build his own. His hobbies disappeared. His ambitions faded. His confidence depended entirely on another person's opinion. When she walked away, it felt as though she had taken his identity with her. Most people believe heartbreak begins when someone leaves. Stoicism teaches something far more uncomfortable. Heartbreak begins the moment you abandon yourself in order to keep someone else. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire larger than most people can imagine. He possessed unimaginable power, wealth, and influence. Yet in his private writings, he reminded himself daily that everything outside his own character could disappear without warning. Reputation could vanish, friends could betray him, family could die, love could fade. Only one thing remained truly his own mind. That idea sounds simple until life tests it. Most people unknowingly hand control of their happiness to someone else. They wake up hoping for a text message. They check social media, searching for signs they still matter. They replay conversations, wondering if they said the wrong thing. They become prisoners inside someone else's decisions. Imagine giving another person the remote control to your emotional state. Every compliment raises your confidence. Every delay fills you with anxiety. Every disagreement destroys your peace. Without realizing it, you have surrendered the one thing Stoics believed should never belong to anyone else. The modern world encourages exactly this behavior. Movies tell us our soulmate completes us. Songs insist love should consume us. Social media celebrates couples as if relationship status determines human value. The message repeats itself until it feels like absolute truth. If you're single, something must be wrong. But what if that belief is the real prison? Epictetus once taught that freedom begins when we stop depending on things outside our control. Think about how revolutionary that idea becomes in relationships. You cannot control who loves you. You cannot control who stays. You cannot control how someone feels tomorrow. Yet millions of people build their entire identity around outcomes they can never fully control. That is why being single can become one of life's greatest teachers. Not because relationships are bad, but because solitude forces you to confront yourself without distractions. When the house becomes quiet and nobody is texting you and nobody is validating your existence, you finally meet the person you've been avoiding. Yourself. For many people, that meeting is uncomfortable. Silence exposes fears that constant relationships often hide. Fear of not being enough, fear of rejection, Fear of growing old alone, fear that without someone else's affection, life has less meaning. Most people rush into another relationship before facing those fears. Stoicism invites you to sit with them instead. Picture standing in a room filled with mirrors. Every insecurity you've hidden suddenly becomes visible. Your impatience, your jealousy, your need for approval, your inability to enjoy your own company. Those reflections are painful, but they are also honest. Without honesty, there can never be transformation. Seneca believed difficulty reveals character more clearly than comfort ever can. Anyone can appear confident when constantly receiving affection. Anyone can seem emotionally strong while surrounded by attention. But who are you when nobody is applauding? That question separates emotionally independent people from emotionally dependent ones. There is an invisible difference between wanting love and needing love. Wanting comes from abundance. Needing comes from emptiness. When someone wants companionship, they add another beautiful chapter to an already meaningful life. When someone needs companionship, they ask another person to become the entire story. The second path always leads to suffering, because no human being can carry that responsibility forever. Consider two individuals beginning identical relationships. One enters feeling complete. The other enters hoping the relationship will finally complete them. At first, both appear equally happy. Months later, the difference becomes obvious. The first person respects boundaries because they have their own purpose. They encourage independence because they understand individuality strengthens love. They remain calm during conflict because their identity exists beyond the relationship. The second person panics whenever communication slows. They interpret distance as rejection. They constantly seek reassurance. Every disagreement feels like proof they are unworthy. Eventually, fear pushes them into controlling behaviors that damage the very connection they desperately wanted to protect. The tragedy isn't that they loved too much. The tragedy is that they forgot to love themselves first. Modern psychology continues discovering what Stoics understood thousands of years ago. People with strong internal stability experience healthier relationships because their emotional foundation doesn't collapse whenever circumstances change. Confidence built from within survives rejection. Confidence borrowed from another person disappears the moment they walk away. This is why staying single during certain seasons of life isn't failure. It is training. Think about an athlete preparing for the biggest competition of their life. They don't avoid difficult workouts because they're uncomfortable. They embrace them because challenge builds. Strength, comfort, never can. Solitude works the same way. Every evening spent alone teaches patience. Every decision made independently builds confidence. Every problem solved without rescue develops resilience. Slowly, almost invisibly, you become someone who no longer fears abandonment because you have already learned how to stand on your own. Then something remarkable happens. The desperate energy people often carry into relationships disappears. You stop chasing people who give mixed signals. You stop begging for attention that should be freely given. You stop explaining your worth to those determined not to see it. You recognize that peace has greater value than temporary validation. Ironically, this inner stability often makes someone more attractive, not because they play games, not because they act cold, but because genuine confidence cannot be faked. People naturally trust those who don't seem terrified of losing them. Calmness creates mystery. Self-respect commands respect. Emotional independence communicates quiet strength without saying a single word. Imagine meeting someone who enjoys your company but doesn't need your approval. They laugh easily, speak honestly, and leave conversations without anxiety. Their happiness existed before you arrived and will continue whether you stay or leave. There is something deeply magnetic about that kind of person because they remind us of freedom. Contrast that with someone constantly checking their phone during dinner, wondering why you haven't smiled enough, worrying whether every sentence sounded intelligent enough to keep your attention. Their fear quietly fills the room. Energy always speaks louder than words. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that another person's opinion cannot diminish virtue. Imagine applying that principle today. Someone ignores your message. Someone rejects your invitation. Someone decides they no longer want a relationship. Does your value actually change, or does only your circumstance change? Most people confuse the two. They mistake rejection for proof of inadequacy. Stoicism refuses that conclusion. If another person cannot recognize your value, that observation belongs to them, not to reality. The sun does not become less bright because someone closes their curtains. Your character does not become less valuable because someone failed to appreciate it. This perspective changes everything. Instead of asking, "Why didn't they choose me?" you begin asking, "Was I living according to my own values?" Instead of obsessing over someone else's behavior, you examine your own actions. Did you remain honest? Did you show courage? Did you protect your dignity? Did you grow stronger? Those questions remain within your control. Everything else is noise. There is another hidden gift that only solitude can offer, and it is one of the most misunderstood advantages of being single. Most people never discover it because they become uncomfortable just before the transformation begins. And once you understand this next Stoic lesson, you'll never look at loneliness the same way again. The strange thing about loneliness is that it rarely comes from being alone. It comes from being disconnected from yourself. You can sit beside someone every night and still feel invisible. You can receive dozens of messages every day and still wonder if anyone truly understands you. That is why Stoicism never treated solitude as the enemy. It treated unconscious living as the real danger. Think about the last time you were completely alone with no music, no television, no phone, and no distractions. How long did it take before your mind began searching for something to escape into? For many people, it takes less than 5 minutes. Silence feels uncomfortable because it forces us to hear thoughts we've spent years trying to drown out. Marcus Aurelius intentionally welcomed those moments. As emperor, he carried the weight of wars, political betrayal, disease, and constant pressure. Yet instead of running from solitude, he returned to it over and over because he understood something timeless. The quality of your life depends on the quality of your mind. If you cannot enjoy your own company, no relationship will permanently solve that problem. Most people chase love, hoping another person will rescue them from themselves. The Stoics reversed that idea completely. Become someone you enjoy living with first. Then every relationship becomes a choice instead of a necessity. Imagine two houses built on different foundations. One rests on solid stone. The other stands on soft sand. From the outside, they appear almost identical, but the first storm reveals everything. Relationships are storms. They bring misunderstandings, disappointment, distance, temptation, loss, and unexpected change. If your emotional foundation depends entirely on another person's affection, every argument feels like an earthquake. But when your foundation is built on self-respect, purpose, discipline, and inner peace, you remain standing, even while everything around you shakes. That is why being single can become one of the greatest construction projects of your entire life. Instead of spending every ounce of energy trying to keep someone else interested, you begin investing in yourself. You wake up earlier. You read books that sharpen your thinking. You train your body until your confidence no longer comes from compliments. You develop skills that increase your value regardless of your relationship status. You strengthen friendships that remind you life is bigger than romance. Day after day, the person in the mirror slowly changes. Not because someone finally loved you, because you finally respected yourself enough to grow. Seneca once wrote that the greatest wealth is a mind content with itself. Think about how rare that has become today. Everywhere you look, companies profit by convincing people they are incomplete. Buy this product, wear these clothes, get into this relationship, chase this lifestyle, then you'll finally be enough. But enough never arrives because the destination keeps moving. Stoicism interrupts that endless race with a simple truth. You are responsible for your character, not for meeting the world's impossible expectations. That realization changes the way you approach love forever. Instead of asking, "Who will choose me?" you begin asking, "Who deserves access to the life I am building?" That single shift transforms your standards. You stop confusing attention with respect. You stop mistaking chemistry for compatibility. You stop accepting inconsistency simply because you fear being alone. Fear has destroyed more good judgment than hatred ever has. People stay in unhealthy relationships because loneliness seems more frightening than unhappiness. They tolerate disrespect because temporary comfort feels safer than uncertain freedom. They silence their values, hoping peace will somehow return. But peace purchased through self-betrayal is never real peace. Epictetus believed no one could truly harm you unless they damaged your character. Think about that for a moment. Someone can reject you, someone can insult you, someone can betray you, someone can leave. Yet none of those actions can steal your integrity unless you surrender it willingly. That perspective is almost impossible to manipulate. When you know your worth, you stop negotiating with people who constantly question it. When you know your purpose, you stop rearranging your future around someone else's uncertainty. When you know your principles, you stop compromising them just to avoid sleeping alone. There is extraordinary freedom in realizing that solitude is temporary, but self-respect can last forever. Consider the story of a woman who spent nearly 15 years jumping from one relationship to another. She believed every breakup meant she had failed. Every time she found herself alone, she rushed to fill the emptiness before she had time to understand it. Then something unexpected happened. After one particularly painful breakup, she made a decision she had avoided her entire adult life. She would spend 1 full year single. No dating apps, no searching, no desperate conversations, hoping old relationships might restart. Just 1 year focused entirely on herself. The first months were difficult. Friday nights felt painfully quiet. She questioned whether she had made the biggest mistake of her life. She watched friends post engagement photos, weddings, vacations, anniversaries, and family celebrations, while she sat alone wondering if she had fallen behind. Comparison whispered lies every single day. It told her she was running out of time. It told her everyone else had figured life out. It told her happiness belonged to couples, not individuals. But she kept going. Instead of chasing distractions, she began asking difficult questions. What kind of life actually makes me proud? What dreams have I ignored? Who am I without constant validation? Those questions slowly rebuilt her identity. She traveled alone for the first time. She earned a promotion because she finally invested in her career. She repaired friendships neglected for years. She learned to enjoy quiet mornings, coffee without rushing conversations, long walks with no destination, and evenings where her peace depended on nobody else's mood. Something remarkable happened near the end of that year. She no longer felt desperate to find someone, not because she had stopped believing in love, because she had stopped believing love was missing. She had discovered fulfillment before companionship. Months later, she met someone completely different from anyone she had dated before. She wasn't impressed by empty charm anymore. She wasn't seduced by inconsistent attention. She recognized emotional maturity because she had developed it herself. The relationship that eventually followed felt lighter, healthier, calmer, and stronger because it was built by two complete people instead of two frightened people trying to rescue each other. This is one of Stoicism's quietest lessons. You attract differently when you think differently. The energy you bring into relationships often determines the relationships you receive. Neediness attracts control. Desperation attracts manipulation. Self-respect attracts respect. That doesn't mean every relationship succeeds. It means failure no longer destroys your identity. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that everything borrowed from life could eventually be returned. Loved ones, careers, possessions, health, reputation, and even life itself were temporary gifts, not permanent guarantees. At first, that idea sounds depressing. In reality, it creates gratitude. When you stop believing someone belongs to you forever, you begin appreciating them while they are here instead of trying to possess them. Love becomes lighter. Fear becomes smaller. Control begins disappearing. You no longer cling because you understand clinging never prevented loss. Presence does. Imagine how many arguments never happen when both people stop trying to own each other. Imagine how much anxiety disappears when love is chosen every day instead of demanded every day. That is emotional freedom. And emotional freedom is impossible without first learning how to stand alone. There is another misunderstanding about being single that deserves to be challenged. Many people assume independence means becoming cold, distant, or emotionally unavailable. Stoicism teaches the opposite. Real strength allows deeper love, because fear no longer controls your decisions. When you aren't terrified of abandonment, you communicate honestly. When you aren't addicted to approval, you establish healthy boundaries. When rejection no longer defines your worth, you become courageous enough to express your true feelings. That is not emotional distance. That is emotional maturity. People often confuse attachment with love. Attachment says, "Don't leave me because I need you." Love says, "I choose you because my life is already meaningful and you make it richer." One comes from fear. The other comes from abundance. The difference changes everything. Perhaps the greatest gift of staying single for a season is that it teaches patience. Modern culture rewards speed, instant messages, instant entertainment, instant attraction, instant gratification. But the most valuable things in life rarely happen instantly. Character takes years, wisdom takes years, discipline takes years, peace takes years. Healthy love often takes years too. People who cannot wait often settle. People who settle often regret. People who regret often convince themselves that love itself is the problem when the real issue was impatience. The Stoics would remind us that nature never rushes, yet everything meaningful unfolds exactly as it should. An oak tree does not apologize for growing slowly. A mountain does not compare itself to a river. Each follows its own path without insecurity. Human beings suffer because they constantly compare their timeline to someone else's. Your friend gets married before you, someone younger buys a house, another person starts a family. Social media convinces you you're late, but late according to whom? Life is not a competition. It is a practice. Every day asks the same question. Are you becoming the person you admire? That question matters infinitely more than whether your relationship status changed this year. And there is one final Stoic principle that ties all of these lessons together. It is perhaps the most powerful lesson of all, because once you truly understand it, you'll never fear being single again. The greatest misunderstanding about being single is that people assume it is a waiting room. They imagine life is somehow paused until the right person arrives. Days become something to survive instead of something to live. Weeks pass with the quiet hope that happiness is just one relationship away. Years disappear while they postpone becoming the person they were meant to become. The Stoics would challenge that belief immediately. Life is not waiting for anyone. Every sunrise offers an opportunity to strengthen your character, whether you are single or married. Every challenge invites you to practice patience, courage, wisdom, and self-control. Every disappointment becomes another chance to prove that your peace belongs to you and not to the unpredictable actions of other people. This is why Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself that every morning was a new beginning. He did not wake up asking what the world would give him. He asked what kind of man he would choose to become. That single question changes everything. Imagine waking up tomorrow with a completely different focus. Instead of asking, "Who will text me today?" you ask, "How can I improve today?" Instead of wondering, "Does someone love me?" you ask, "Am I becoming someone worthy of my own respect?" Instead of chasing attention, you begin chasing excellence. The difference seems small, but repeated every day for months and years, it creates two completely different lives. One life is built on expectation. The other is built on intention. Expectation makes your happiness dependent on outcomes. Intention makes your happiness dependent on effort. And effort is always within your control. This is where Stoicism becomes practical rather than philosophical. Every single day, you have a choice. You can spend hours wondering why someone ignored your message, or you can spend those same hours improving your body, your mind, your finances, your relationships with family, your career, your spiritual life, and your discipline. One path leaves you emotionally exhausted. The other leaves you undeniably stronger. Think about the people you admire most. Rarely do you admire them because they were constantly chasing validation. You admire them because they stood firmly on their principles, because they refused to compromise their values, because they remained calm during chaos, because they kept moving forward while others made excuses. That kind of strength is never built through comfort. It is built through seasons of solitude where no one applauds your effort. The gym is empty at 5 in the morning. The library is quiet late at night. The early mornings, the difficult decisions, the sacrifices, those moments shape character long before success becomes visible. Being single gives you something incredibly valuable: time. Time that many people unknowingly waste. Time to discover who you are when nobody expects anything from you. Time to develop skills that change your future. Time to become emotionally stable. Time to heal wounds that would otherwise poison your next relationship. Because unhealed pain has a strange habit, it introduces itself as personality. Someone says they are just protective. In reality, they are afraid of abandonment. Someone says they are independent. In reality, they are terrified of trusting again. Someone says they have high standards. In reality, they are still carrying yesterday's heartbreak into tomorrow's opportunities. Healing matters, not because it changes the past, because it changes the future. Seneca believed that no wind is favorable to a sailor who has no destination. Many people desperately search for relationships without ever deciding who they want to become. They know exactly what they want from another person, but almost nothing about what they expect from themselves. Ask yourself a difficult question. If someone exactly like you entered your life today, would you admire them? Would you trust them? Would you respect their discipline? Would you be inspired by their habits? Would you feel safe around their emotional maturity? Or would you secretly hope they change? That question is uncomfortable, but discomfort often reveals truth. Stoicism never promised comfort. It promised clarity. Clarity forces growth. Growth creates confidence. Confidence creates freedom. Freedom changes everything. There comes a moment in every person's life when they realize they have spent too much energy trying to convince the wrong people to stay. They replay conversations. They analyze messages. They blame themselves. They imagine different endings. But eventually, wisdom arrives quietly. The people meant to remain in your life should not require you to abandon yourself. Real connection never demands that you sacrifice your dignity. Real love never asks you to become smaller so someone else feels bigger. Real respect never requires endless begging. Epictetus taught that we should never attach ourselves to things we cannot control. That includes another person's choices. You cannot force loyalty. You cannot negotiate genuine respect. You cannot argue someone into appreciating your value. The only thing you can control is the way you respond. That realization is one of the most liberating experiences a human being can have. Because suddenly, rejection loses its power. Not because rejection disappears, because your identity no longer depends on avoiding it. Imagine two doors. One door closes. Most people spend months staring at the closed door asking why. The Stoic quietly turns around and continues walking. Not because they do not care, because they understand that life continues moving, whether they remain trapped in yesterday or embrace tomorrow. This mindset creates extraordinary resilience. Every disappointment becomes education. Every failure becomes preparation. Every ending becomes redirection. Nothing is wasted. Everything becomes part of your character. Think about the strongest people you know. Their strength was not created by perfect relationships. It was created by surviving imperfect circumstances. They experienced betrayal, loss, failure, loneliness, disappointment, yet somehow they became kinder instead of bitter, stronger instead of fearful, wiser instead of cynical. That transformation did not happen accidentally. It happened because they refused to allow pain to define them. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the obstacle becomes the way. The very thing you believe is holding you back often becomes the source of your greatest strength. Your loneliness teaches independence. Your heartbreak teaches discernment. Your rejection teaches resilience. Your silence teaches self-awareness. Your solitude teaches peace. Suddenly, the season you once hated becomes the season you appreciate most, because without it, you would never have discovered who you really are. One of the greatest tragedies in modern society is that people have forgotten how to enjoy their own lives. Every free moment must be filled, every silence interrupted, every emotion distracted. Phones, notifications, entertainment, constant stimulation. Yet the Stoics intentionally created moments of stillness, because stillness reveals truth. When the noise disappears, you finally hear your own thoughts. You recognize your fears. You discover your dreams. You notice your habits. You begin understanding yourself instead of constantly escaping yourself. That self-awareness becomes a competitive advantage in every area of life. It improves your leadership, your friendships, your career, your decision-making, and eventually your relationships, because emotionally mature people communicate differently. They listen more than they react. They understand more than they assume. They protect peace instead of chasing drama. That is rare, and rarity creates value. Perhaps the most beautiful lesson Stoicism offers is this. You do not need a perfect life to experience inner peace. You need a disciplined mind, a grateful heart, a meaningful purpose. Everything else is a bonus. Relationships become richer. Success becomes more enjoyable. Friendships become deeper, because they are no longer carrying the impossible responsibility of creating your happiness. You created that yourself. Now imagine yourself 5 years from today. There are two possible versions of you. The first spent 5 years chasing people who never truly valued them. They sacrificed dreams for temporary attention. They ignored personal growth. They waited for happiness to arrive from someone else. The second version spent 5 years becoming stronger, reading, learning, building, training, healing, growing, developing wisdom, protecting peace, living according to values instead of emotions. Now ask yourself honestly, which person is more prepared for love? Which person is more attractive without trying? Which person is more resilient when life becomes difficult? Which person is more likely to build a relationship that actually lasts? The answer is obvious. Healthy love is not found by accident. It is sustained by character. Character built in solitude. That is why being single is never time wasted. It is time invested. Invested in your future, your peace, your confidence, your wisdom, your freedom. So if you are watching this today while feeling lonely, remember this. Loneliness is temporary. Character is permanent. Heartbreak is temporary. Wisdom is permanent. Rejection is temporary. Self-respect is permanent. Choose the things that remain. Build the qualities no one can steal. Become the kind of person who carries peace into every room, because that peace was built long before anyone else arrived. One day someone may walk into your life. If they do, welcome them with gratitude, not desperation. Walk beside them, not behind them. Love them without losing yourself. Support them without abandoning your purpose. Cherish them without trying to possess them. And if that day has not yet come, do not believe for a second that your life is incomplete. The Stoics would remind you that your greatest relationship has always been the one you have with your own mind. Protect it, strengthen it, respect it. Because when you finally master yourself, the world loses its ability to control you. That is the quiet strength of Stoicism. That is the power of self-mastery. And that is why being single may be one of the smartest decisions you will ever make. Not because you avoid love, but because you become the kind of person who can truly give and receive it without fear. If this message changed your perspective, take one lesson from today's video and apply it this week. Share in the comments what lesson resonated with you the most. And if you're committed to becoming mentally stronger, emotionally calmer, and wiser every day through timeless Stoic principles, subscribe and join this journey. Remember, the strongest empire you will ever build is not around you, it is within you.